Hey everybody, welcome back to this Pastor Dad thing that we're doing. Whatever we're going to call that in the future, who knows? But discussing faith, family, culture, and truth is kind of our thing. Emphasis on truth, right? We want to pursue truth in all things. I want to start by saying that just a thank you for those of you that dropped comments and suggestions about the format of this show or how the content should be laid out. That's helpful because I want it to be valuable and useful to all of you and maybe friends of yours if it becomes grows beyond just that first level of our friendship circle. So if it can be of value to anybody else, happy to have you share this and keep the discussion going. But of particular importance, I think, or particular help was Denise's comment, just kind of reiterating what I had already said. But I told you in the first video I created that I tend to overthink things, I overanalyze, and so I can turn a science project into a I can make a science project out of the simplest of things and overthink, overanalyze, and then never get anything done. So it was helpful to hear that back at me, and keep these things prayed up. So we're letting the Holy Spirit lead, because faith again is going to be paramount in this, and so that's how I'll attack it. Everything will be looked at through the lens of faith. But that's because that's my worldview. But truth is my ultimate goal. If I were to find out, that Christianity was not true, I would stop following it. I mean, I don't. Paul said that in 1 Corinthians. If the resurrection isn't true, then our faith is in vain, and we're still in our sin, and it's not helping us at all. So he was, author of a quarter of the New Testament or more, and he was of the mind that if this is not true, I'm just going to pass it by. I'm going to move on because it doesn't help. And so, of course, he concluded the resurrection was true. So truth is our pursuit in everything, as seen through the lens of faith, because that is my worldview. And for many of you that are listening, that is your worldview as well. If it's not your worldview, I just want to say, we are thrilled to have you listening, thrilled to have your involvement. I would hope one day that you would see the truth of the Christian faith, and that you'd put your hope and trust and belief in Jesus for the salvation of your soul, and that matters more than anything. And so we'll keep coming back to that, but sometimes we'll pursue things that are not out and out Christian things. And so thank you for the comments. Thank you for the suggestions. Thank you for all that. I did go and get some merch produced. I can make you one of these about 5 seconds. If you have to bring the mug yourself. I don't have any mugs, but I can make you one of those Pastor Dad Show covers for your mug. If just a little bit of tape and a Post-it note, we can do that for you. So we're already selling merch. This is a big deal. We're making progress. But this episode is going to be episode 2. It really is the first real episode, so I'm just getting my feet under me, and we'll see how it goes. But this first episode with actual content brought to you by Trump, Tylenol, and the Sanctity of Life. I want to say at the outset, I'm recording this just on an app on my PC, but I may put it back into, if time is available for this, I may put it back into an editing software and try to put some images and some fancy it up a little bit for you. My goal would be to have that, to get good at that, and so that I can put images regularly, put those into the videos for you to see. But we'll see. Time's going to tell whether or not I have the time to do that, and I'm any good at it. So those are two big questions there. But again, episode 2 brought to you by Trump, Tylenol, and the Sanctity of Life. I want to start by saying a word about partisanship and political tribes. We have a tendency as people, and more now than I've ever seen in my life, and I think more now than anybody has. The last few generations have seen. We have a tendency to tribalize. And what I mean is you find your tribe, you find the people that you're comfortable with, the people that you share the most agreement with on some of the big worldview issues, and then we tend to tribalized to the point where we just hang with those people. And we'll find that on even issues that are not inherently political, we will look for what our political view is. And so I saw this coming with COVID. I saw this coming right away. There was because it was so new, we didn't have a code yet for what our view should be. But quickly we were able to organize ourselves into tribes. We were able to organize ourselves into like-minded people. But I don't know that it was like-minded. I think it was just tribalizing. Like, we found out what the left response to COVID was. We found out what the right response to COVID. I mean, left and right, not left and correct. Though sometimes I would say that. But we all were trying to find our footing and to understand how we should handle these things. And it didn't take long before we found out what the leftist answer and what the right wing answer was. And then we tribalized even on that. I want to say that oftentimes the truth exists sort of between extremes. And so sometimes you'll find some truth on one, end of a polarized issue, and you'll find some truth on the other end of a polarized issue. I think that I really believe this, truth ought to be our goal in all of it. Like, we should be willing to part ways with our tribe when we think our tribe is wrong. We should sometimes think our tribe is wrong. We should have opportunities where we are willing to we're willing to differ with somebody who otherwise, more often than not, believes the same way that we do. Why? Because truth is what we're after. And no two people will think alike on everything if they actually are doing their own thinking. Now, if you're just getting your talking points from one tribe or the other, then you'll have them pretty well set, and you don't have to do much thinking. You can just parrot those talking points, and that's it. But with that said, truth should be our goal. And I think I go into any presidential election. I said last Sunday that some Christians don't think that we should participate in the political stuff. We shouldn't vote. We shouldn't. I think it's awesome that we can. I think as Christians, we understand this is not our primary home. As the old hymn says, "This world is not my home. I'm just a passing through." But we have the privilege, and I think even the responsibility, unless it cuts against our consciences. But I think we have a responsibility to be involved in that process, because we should care what kind of world we're giving to future generations. We should care about that. But I have a mindset that I think I've always had. I don't know, because I haven't thought. When I was younger, I didn't really think that deeply about this stuff. But I have, even when the president was elected that I didn't vote for, my hope is that they're successful, and that their success translates into success for the nation. Maybe I was wrong about a thing or two, and they're going to prove it by enacting policy and things that advancing legislation and things that are going to improve the nation. Now, we differ on what improvement looks like in many ways, but my general thought is that I want to see a president be successful regardless of whether or not I voted for them, because their success will translate into our success. Again, unless they're completely partisan issues where we know what our stance is and we're completely opposed. But we should want to see the nation succeed for the betterment of our neighbors. I mean, we should want that. And it's just odd to me how in the current political milieu and climate, it's almost as if anything and everything, and I want to go beyond saying almost as if, it is the case that anything this administration, the Trump administration, claims or does will be unilaterally. It'll be completely one-sided. It'll be a complete battle in every media outlet. I mean, it's everything he says. He could say water is wet, and they'd be like, well, actually, I don't think that's the case. And here studies suggest that it's not, and yada yada. Um, and even in matters of like health and safety, we see tribalizing in opposition to Trump, bad man Trump, to our own detriment. And most recently, uh, with this Tylenol thing. We have the Trump administration making some claims. I went to the White House website and clicked on some links. And if I can get these things, images created and video edited, I'll throw some of those in there. But I mean, they're not linked to like Wikipedia articles. They're linked to like Harvard studies and Johns Hopkins university studies and consensus statements. I mean, there's all this stuff in there. In fact, I'm going to pull up maybe just a couple of the things. So Andrea Baccarelli, out of dean of the faculty at Harvard, and they did a rigorous review of a lot of studies to find that Tylenol, and if you didn't, I didn't say this already, but Tylenol, the claim is that pregnant women should avoid taking Tylenol, or at least be very careful about it. There's a link suggested between use of Tylenol when pregnant and an increase of risk for autism and ADHD. Now, on the White House website, you can see several studies that they're linked to, and so I clicked on a few of them, and basically was just looking at the abstracts in each of these. I mean, I don't have a background in the medical field, so I'm not prepared to read through all these things and then debate them. But I can read the abstracts and see what are they basically saying at bottom. What are they saying? And each of the studies, it concludes with something like may increase children's autism and ADHD risk. Johns Hopkins, elevated risk for autism and ADHD. And then Mount Sinai, increased risk of autism and ADHD. And then there's this 2021 consensus statement internationally that highlighted a call for precautionary action, recommending that pregnant women minimize exposure to acetaminophen by using the lowest effective dose for the shortest possible time. Now, this coincides with all of this talk, coincides with even Tylenol. There's a 2017 tweet out there, which is funny because they said we don't actually recommend using any of our products when you're pregnant. And then later they kind of retracted that with the pressure, I think, from media outlets. They're pressured to clarify, and they came out with a clarification statement that it was taken. The administration took it out of context. Well, I don't know what context you could cite when you say we don't recommend taking our products at all when you're pregnant. There isn't a context. That's a blanket statement. But I'm sure they were pressured to have some nuance there. And of course, sometimes you have to take painkillers or whatever. If it's unbearable. But always, I mean, it's a pretty nonpartisan thing to issue caution with regard to painkillers for anybody, even a healthy person who's not pregnant. Should be issued caution with regard to how much and how often you use painkillers. And now all of a sudden it's something to war over and something for Tylenol themselves to clarify. Now, the media's response, and if I can get these images, I'll get them for you, but just a couple of the headlines. New York Times, Tylenol issues clarification after White House resurfaces 2017 tweet. PBS says doctor challenges Trump administration's claims about acetaminophen and autism. Well, good. They should challenge that, and this should be a rigorous debate. That's what science is supposed to do. But not when all the articles, all the headlines say the same exact thing. Reuters, Trump repeats Tylenol and vaccine claims, defying medical community outcry. ABC News, Trump's announcement on autism and Tylenol, what parents need to know. So these are all articles that are challenging the notion of Tylenol and the correlation of increased risk for autism and ADHD and things like that. Now, correlation is not causation, and everyone should know that. You might see an increase of both and see that there must be some connection here, and really there isn't a connection. There's some other, other thing that's, you're not looking at yet, and that's actually the causal property. And again, no medical background for me, so I'm just looking at this as a guy who just wants to think well, and with consistency, and to and to be searching for truth. And if I find that the Trump administration and the health secretary and all of them are completely off base, I want to know that. I'm not harmed because I'm fairly conservative. I'm not harmed by finding out that Trump was wrong about something. First of all, I'm not a Trump apologist, so there's plenty there to critique, and there's plenty there to take issue with. But if we are after the betterment of our society, the betterment of our neighbors, and they're finding links between certain painkillers and like a correlation between use of those painkillers and the potential for increased risk of autism or ADHD, we should be mindful of that. That should matter to us. And again, we want to see the rigorous scientific method put to work in finding out whether or not this is true. And if it is true, then yes, use caution. And so each of these studies all said, consult with a medical professional, your doctor, and decide. But I love that comment that the international study came up with. The lowest effective dose for the shortest possible time. I think that's just true in general. We should always be looking for the least amount that we can take, so we're not getting hooked on something, or not exposing ourselves to unnecessarily to acute doses of high doses of things that are not natural, right? And so it's just interesting to me, though, that we had such a response in the media, and that's always kind of a partisan look. Unless you're following news that is expressly conservative, you're going to find that it is expressly the opposite, and that's just a matter of fact. You could not like that fact, but it's just a matter of fact. And I've had friends over the years thought, Fox News or other conservative outlets should be shut down, and they just want one like univocal authority and nobody ever disagreeing. Like, man, I want all the voices, sometimes clashing, sometimes loudly, because we are going to be better off in the marketplace of ideas. If all those ideas are exchanged, all those ideas are put forward, we are all going to be better off for the rigor that's behind that, and for all voices to be heard, even the ones that eventually might right away, be seen as sort of ridiculous or, outliers that, okay, move on from those. But science should be interested in debate, and putting forth best ideas, and hardest challenges against those ideas. We should all want that. What was perhaps more interesting than even the response by the media was the response by a number of pregnant women who wanted to sort of stick it to the man and say, I'm not going to listen to anything that the Trump administration says. And so I'm going to prove that it doesn't cause autism, or there's no, real link there. And just guzzling Tylenol is some sort of a protest. I heard of one young mother-to-be, and I don't know anything about the story. So I saw a video from a nurse. I believe she was a nurse. That's what she presents herself to be, I think. And she was talking about how she got a phone call at 4 a.m. From a frantic husband whose wife had taken a bunch of Tylenol and was in the ICU on a ventilator and probably going to die. She was 20-some weeks pregnant. Horrible situation if that actually happened. Now, I searched almost in vain for anybody that was actually covering that, or any news source that covered that, because they're all running cover for Tylenol. Tylenol, I mean, if you look at their 2017 tweet, they have nothing to run from. They have nothing to be covered from. They know that the product shouldn't be misused, and they're perfectly happy to say that in 2017, until it became a partisan issue. Somehow, we've got to be better than this. We've got to rise above the tribalizing temptation. because when it's a matter of truth, we should want that truth. Nobody's made better by guzzling Tylenol in dangerous doses simply to try to stick it to the man, because you don't want Trump to ever be right about anything. I couldn't care less if Trump is right. I mean, I want him to be successful, but I couldn't care less if truth was found by Trump or truth was found by Biden or truth was. I mean, I want truth, and so insofar as one of them or both of them are speaking it, I want it. I think everybody should, and we should certainly not be harming, you know, children in the womb. Which is this if this tragic thing happens where this woman dies and the baby doesn't survive, like this is just a dual tragedy. It's an awful thing. But what is what's it? What motivated it was nothing but partisan politics to the extreme, to the point of truth dying in the streets. Doesn't matter. I'm going to do what is most anti-Trump in this moment. And I think that would be foolish for the left or the right to do. We should examine each claim on its own, and allow a rigorous application of the scientific method to play out, which is why I think these things take years to find out, not minutes or days or weeks or months. They take years to find out what science is saying, what science makes clear or not over time. And incidentally, that's why I think a healthy skeptical approach to novel vaccines was the right approach. You can deny if you want, but there are such things as vaccine injuries, and not the examples are not exactly hard to find. The correlation not difficult to see, and a lot more doctors coming out now saying, yeah, these were, and this is something that Trump was pushing too. And so, truth is not partisan. Truth doesn't care who is right. Truth just cares about what is true, and that's what we should care about. That's what we should be after, as not just Christians but people in general. Because truth is where I preached a couple weeks ago, John 8:32. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Even if that's a truth that you don't like, or it's not a warm and fuzzy truth. Like if I eat nothing but candy, I will get fatter than I am. If I might not like that truth, it may seem to be even an insensitive truth that I want to hear that candy's fine and I can eat as much as I want. Well, the truth is that I will get sick. I'll become diabetic, and I'll have to take insulin. And sometimes in some cases it gets so bad it's just even that doesn't really help. So, like, I want truth. You should want truth. We should all want truth because we are going to be better off. Now, if coming back to the autism thing, we believe as Christians, we believe in the sanctity of life, and so I think Christians should be pro-life from womb to the tomb. We should be our lives should be characterized by caring for life, not just in the womb, but throughout the life of the person, and so we should want, if we can improve the life of somebody who might have been born at higher risk for autism, if we can reduce that risk, we should want that. Left or right, it doesn't really matter. We should want that. I mean, there's certainly some cases of autism are not as severe, and some people wouldn't even know. I wonder sometimes if actually it's just a spectrum, right? And we're all somewhere on that spectrum. Do we just diagnose more often now? Again, I'm not a medical professional, and I've not studied this particular thing all that much, but I just wonder if we are diagnosing more, or if we're seeing it more. And I'd be interested in your comments on that. If you have studied it, if you have looked into this, I'd be interested in what you might have to say about it. But I would be I would say that we should be pro-life, and the interesting thing is that for the pro-choice side of things, it seems to me that any number of reasons a person might want to choose to say that they have the right to and might opt to terminate a pregnancy. I could see this being one of the reasons. If you're at high risk for a severe case of autism, I could see somebody saying that might be a legitimate grounds for considering termination of the pregnancy. Now, others, we're all going to line up on in some different place, but I could see that. I don't know that I've ever heard somebody say that, but I could see that being. I certainly have heard it in things like Down syndrome and other things that I would be completely against, because the quality of their life is not, shouldn't be. Just because we think that their quality of life might not be as good as it could be or as good as ours was, doesn't mean to my mind, is our choice to make. But that's because I'm pro-life, and I'm going to consistently say that, regardless of what I think the risks might be. But it's just interesting. I think this should not be a partisan thing. If we can lower the risk of autism and ADHD and other things that people go seek out medical help to deal with, well, wouldn't it be all the better if we didn't even need to go get help to deal with it? I think this is kind of an obvious thing. But again, I'd be interested in your comments, because I don't know a whole lot about the studies with autism and things like that. And again, the studies that I did look at were studies that suggested a correlation, not causation. And so those are two very different things. But correlation certainly should be cause for us to look at that correlation and look deeper and say, is there a causal sort of relationship here? And maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But I think sanctity of life, we should cherish life in all forms, and whether, regardless. But if we can improve that life, then we should do everything we can to do so. Every moral thing that we can to do that. So that brings us to kind of a tie-in to our Q&A section. And with this, we'll wrap up episode number 2. But we had a couple questions come in sort of related. So I'll take the first one first, and then that related question might have some additional thoughts. But first question is, every human that walks this planet a creation of God, or are their demonic creations masquerading as humans? Basically, are all people inherently good but make bad choices, or are they just evil people? I think there's some nuance that we need to tease that out a little bit further before I answer. First of all, every human that God has created, I believe, is human. I don't think He created some humans that are kind of like they're demon humans. All humans are made in the image of God, and therefore of infinite worth to Him. And in those for whom His Son conquered death for on behalf of everybody. Now, with that said, are there also demonic creatures masquerading as humans? Yes, I think there are. The Bible says that Satan, walks around as an angel of light and can kind of take on that appearance. And certainly that could be the case with humans. But I think also, I believe in possession and demonic oppression. And so otherwise, normal people might give place to the Bible talks about giving place to the enemy. And that might be by way of a demonic oppression or possession. And so in that way, they're influencing the person that otherwise, apart from that demon, God is still after them for salvation and loves them. We could go into, and I'll probably set this aside for now, but the idea of the fall and fallen angels and there's other discussions with Nephilim and kind of half creatures. I'm actually going to point you to Tim Blair on that. You can go talk to Tim Blair some more on that, but I'll do some digging as well. But basically, are all people inherently good but make bad choices, or are there just evil people? That's a separate question. So of all that population that we consider to be human, made in the image of God, none of we are actually inherently bad. Um, that the fall did that to us. We are inherently bad. We are all born with a sin nature, and we are all born into sin. That's our default mode is sin. I mean, from the very beginning, we see that rebellion is toddlers or even younger than toddlers. We see your parent says no, kid wants to do. Like it's like I've joked around about this. You see a sign that says keep out. It makes you just want to not keep out. Like you just want to see what's in there now. I didn't care what was behind that fence when it didn't say keep out, but now I do. Now that the sign is there. And so I would say we are basically, we are made with the capacity for good, insofar as we are in line with the Lord. And certainly social pressures can can make us want to do things because we care about our reputations. But I would say we are actually inherently bad post fall. Genesis chapter 3. We are inherently bad, and it's only by Christ's influence on us that we become good. And I want to defend this a little bit. I will often say from the pulpit, like if you think that you're good, if you think that you're inherently good, I want you to think about what you'd be capable of doing. What would you be capable of doing if you knew that you would never get caught? Not if you thought you would never get caught, because we still don't do things that we think there's even a chance we might get caught. We don't do those things because the social pressures and the reputation, everything else. But think about what you would be capable of doing if you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt there's no way you're going to get caught. What would you be guilty of doing? What would you, what would you not take for yourself if you knew you could? You envy a lifestyle somebody else has. They've got the big house, the boat, and all these things, and you could easily take what you want, and make that life for yourself. What would stop you? Apart from the Holy Spirit in Christians, I don't know much would stop anybody from doing exactly what they wanted to do to achieve the life that they want to achieve. And how far would that go? That might look different for each person, but I think the evil element is just too obvious in that thought experiment. So whenever somebody asks me, do you think people are inherently good or inherently evil? I say I absolutely think they're inherently evil. I think it's societal pressures, and of course we are made in the image of God, so we have that in us, like a sense of justice, a sense of right and wrong. It's the moral argument for the existence of God. If you want to go back, a number of weeks in our sermon series, I talked about the moral argument for the existence of God, and that He provides us these moral absolutes. But I would say that we're a blend. I love the quote, and I've shared it so many times. But Alexander Solzhenitsyn said something to the effect of, we would like to be able to just sort of separate the good people from the bad people. We would like to be able to just sort of put all the good people on an island, and they could live their good life and have a good society and civilization, and put the bad people on a different island and let them basically just tear each other up, and the civilization probably won't last that long. He said the problem with thinking that way is that all of us are actually, the line between good and evil runs right through the heart of every single human being. We are all a mix of good and bad. And so that's where it's difficult. You can never just put good people together and the bad people together. It just wouldn't work out because we are all a mix of both. And so I think that's just the bottom line. I do think there's evil entities that are evil, and they're demonic. There's demons and angels, I believe, but people, as God created us in His image, we have we should be thinking of them as separate from the demonic realm. All right, second part of that question was, how does a Christian reconcile in their spirit the agony of death for one life while simultaneously rejoicing for the death of another? And the example was sort of like if you have a loved one, obviously we agonize their death, and we have an evil dictator, we might celebrate or rejoice that person is no longer no longer on earth. Well, I would say this. I would say both are reflections of the image of God in us. Um, God loves all living things, and so he created all of us, the humans and animal kingdom, and so to live and to thrive and stuff, and so we agonize death partly because we're made in His image, but I would say maybe in a more profound way we agonize over death because it was the consequence for the fall. I mean, we go back to Genesis and it says, when they kicked out of the garden, they were kicked out of the garden that and access to the tree of life. And so because they couldn't get to the tree of life, they would no longer, they would realize their mortality. The tree of life would have preserved their life continually, ongoingly. And when they were cut off access from that tree of life, they were going to die. And so death was not just an enemy, death was the enemy. Death was the result. And the antithesis of the greatest thing, which was life, death was the antithesis of that. It was the exact opposite. And the menace of life was death. And so we should have in us, not just from experientially, but we should theologically have an understanding of death as the cruel thing that it is, the awful thing that it is. We should. I think we've gotten so used to death that it like when Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, "Oh death, where is your sting?" He's talking about in light of the resurrection. Oh death, where is your sting? But that is only because of it's in light of the resurrection. But without that, oh death, where's your sting? It's very palpable. It's right there. It's very obvious, and so we should see death for the absolute menace that it is. We should see death for the absolute terrible thing that it is, and to minimize it simply because of its ubiquity, because it's all around us, it's all over the place, and we're so used to it. Is to not understand death for the great menace that it is. So we agonize, especially those that have gone that we love, and because we agonize for them not being with us, we agonize for their life being cut off. It's awful. Everything's awful about it, unless of course they knew Christ, and to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, and so we're happy for them in that sense. But how does a Christian reconcile the agony of death for one life while simultaneously rejoicing in the death of another? I would go back. I would challenge the necessity of rejoicing for the death of another, even if at the same time we understand that that's what needed to happen. So I'd go back to the public execution of Saddam Hussein, and I shared this a couple weeks ago as well. But I would go back to that moment, and I would say, as people were cheering, as that floor dropped out and his body was hanging, and obviously life escaped his body. I wasn't cheering. In fact, I felt like it was kind of weird. I felt this sort of like, it just felt odd to me that people were so openly cheering for it. And why is that? It was because I had a strong sense I live with a strong sense of the sanctity of life, and the great hope for every single human being to repent and to turn their life over to Christ, and to become fully alive in Christ, to be able to walk into the purposes and the reason you were made and put on this earth, and to be able to live that out, and in that moment of death, even for the most evil of people, that flame of hope is snuffed out, and there's no longer any hope for that person. And so I take that approach to death in general. Although a part of me, and again, I would say it's a reflection of the Imago Dei, or the image of God in our life. I would say a part of me still recognizes that the removal of evil from the midst of people, somebody who is opaquely evil like him, the removal of that person from society is a net positive for the rest of society. And in that sense, when you recognize somebody who's so far gone that they've gone so far into the dark side that they're unlikely, unwilling, they're just not going to change, then they have to be removed from society. And their removal will necessarily mean an improvement of society, at least as long as politics doesn't muck that up, and meddling of. There's all sorts of things we can say in the wake of Saddam Hussein being executed, but I'm no expert on that either, so I'll leave that off. But ideally, when you remove evil from people, it is to their benefit that the evil has been removed, and so I think in that sense we rejoice when an evil life is ended, because it represents a net positive for the rest of the people that are choosing to live their lives more or less in harmony with other people. And so that's why I think I would say on that. But I don't think that we are called to or necessarily need to feel it our sense of duty as human beings to cheer for anybody dying. And we can recognize the tragedy for what it is, the end of life for what it is, the end of hope for that person, the end of any chance they might turn their life around and repent and believe in Jesus and be a positive contributor to the world. And that's over. And so that's a dark thing. It's a sobering thing to think about. So I'll leave it at that. This was episode 2. Hopefully something that was said can be helpful for somebody out there. I would love, and some of the things that I asked you to comment on, I'd love to hear your take on these things. And if you felt like this was beneficial, feel free to share with somebody else, whether through a direct message or just share the link for somebody else. We do hope that this can help us to all think more accurately and about things, all things, faith, family, culture, and ultimately truth. So until next time, God bless, and we'll see you soon.